Stacy Rothgeb. I'm an MBA student at the University of Denver. I'm talking about the session, Learn How to Create Your Perfect Pitch. So this was a workshop session at South by Southwest. I have hosted a workshop session earlier in the week, and so I was very interested to see how someone else executed one. This one was led by Paul Ostenhoward, who used to be the VP of Creative for Disney. So I had very high expectations about advice that would be provided how to make a pitch more creative and dynamic and engaging. What I found though was that his learnings that he provided were not that unique. There were some very true points. It was starting with the value of storytelling. I mean, this has become a pretty common recommendation. So, I was a little disappointed to hear that. I was like, I didn't need another storytelling talk. He also talked a little bit about pitch prep. So nothing too outstanding here. It was knowing your narrative, making sure you keep it action oriented, having a plan, and catchy title. You want to leave, if you want someone to remember you, got to leave them with something, whatever that catchy phrase is, being very focused on who your audience is and what's in it for them, and the value of a SWOT analysis before you actually even go into the pitch, so you know what your strengths or weaknesses are, can identify it right off the bat and go on with it. With the idea of start with a story, starting what if I could take you to this point in time? So craft that story right off the beginning. That was all great. More interestingly is that I think I was fairly disappointed in this session. I think it was one of those, to me, as someone who has presented before, it was obvious that his slides were done on the plane on the way out, and they didn't have that level of effort. And it was very ironic because many of the recommendations that were being provided were being directly, the opposite was being done. They were being defied in the presentation as he was giving it to us. So it's like he didn't follow his own advice while he was providing this pitch in this workshop of how to develop a pitch. And some examples of that is that, there was, discouraging you from, throwing it all on a PowerPoint slide and reading it and not knowing your material. And I think he knew his material, but it was like he would tell us in one sentence, don't read your PowerPoint slide as he's reading the PowerPoint slide. Another thing was knowing your audience, is that towards the end it became very apparent that the anticipated audience was fairly young in their career, and a lot of the advice was around that. But if you looked around the room, you had people that I would say were more mid-career, and an indicator that the audience was not engaged as they started leaving halfway through. And so I, as a speaker, I would have expected him to adjust. Another symptom that showed me that you probably didn't put enough thought into the presentation was that it was basically the beginning of it was glorious, like he had taken it from somewhere else where he told this beautiful story. The pictures were very motivational and engaging, and so he did a great job of getting us right there in the first 5 minutes and being like, oh, this is going to be great. But then it just totally dropped off, and it was one background, and he kept putting text on top of it. The background didn't make sense with the text, and he just and then again it was just that lists and lists of it was like a free thought thrown on a slide instead of any true. The development of the thought was fine, but it was the delivery had a lot to be desired. Now, I will say you can learn something from anything. So the one thing that was said that was kind of uniquely phrased that I will definitely apply and kind of internalize and see how I can use going forward was to be vaguely specific versus specifically vague. And what was interesting, and especially coming from someone who was doing pitches for Disney, he said, there was a lot about don't spend too much time when you're doing a pitch in getting your graphics just right. Graphics are important, but you want your graphics to be vague enough so that the audience will start applying what they're understanding or where they want it to be on top of it. So they will have this freedom to interpret it as you want. And why I think that's important is because, especially if you're doing a good job of a pitch and reading your audience and correcting on the spot, you don't want the graphic to take, if the discussion's going in a different direction, you don't want the graphic to lock you into one direction. So how I interpret that is you want it to be loose enough where you can, like, the fundamental idea is there, but if you need to pivot on the fly or even investigate more of a certain direction than what was intended, you have lots of leeway within what is already there to do that. So again, you can learn something anywhere you go, but if you're going to talk at South by Southwest, be prepared. Thank you.